My drum processing sucked for a really long time, but I noticed a massive difference when I learned these specific topics and techniques. And over the next few minutes, we're gonna go through all of them. No fluff, no bullshit, one after the other. First up, we're going right to the kick drum, and let's talk about layering. I want to give you two options to layer your kicks. The first way is going to be to take the click of one kick, drag it onto the body of the other kick, and using my audio fades, I can merge them together and get the exact sound I want. The other alternative is to literally stack two kick drums on top of each other and play them at the same time. This can be a little trickier though, because now we're dealing with phasing issues. The way I usually go about solving these phasing issues is with a plugin called Fuser. It does it for me. With clicking this one button, it will automatically align the phase of these two samples. Listen to the difference it makes on and off. While we're on topic, let's also just think about phasing between kick and snare when you have both playing at the same time. Very common in a lot of genres. Fuser can once again solve this problem and get you a better sound. Now, if you don't have something like Fuser, you could still use a utility plugin in your DAW, which allows for a phase flip. There's also a free plugin by Melda Audio, which allows you to rotate through phase. It requires a little bit more work on your end, but you can still get to a quality sound. Staying on topic with kicks, I want to give you a game changer in terms of finding the right sample for your song. Create a drum rack and drop as many kicks as you'd like onto these different pads. All you have to do is program the MIDI for each kick, and as you drag these notes through the different samples, you can hear each kick drum in real time in your production. Go with the one that sounds best. You could do it with claps, you could do it with hi-hats, you could do it with any drum sample. The key is though, you're hearing it in real time. Now, if you're someone who doesn't really use MIDI and you want to do this with audio, you can. Utilize the fact that you can audition samples in your browser while your song is playing. Make decisions based on what samples work for your song, rather than what samples just sound good on their own. When layering your drum sounds, go for different sounding samples rather than similar. These differences create an easier distinction from layer to layer where they each provide value. For example, I might use a drum machine clap, something like a real hand clap, and then some other kind of tonal or more unique layer. Altogether now, they each provide their own value. Another thing to think about when choosing your drums, they want to complement the high end in your synths. If you have very noisy synths, don't choose very noisy drums with all that high end. Instead, choose more tonal drums. They'll complement each other better. On the flip side, if you have a song where, let's say, the leads aren't that bright, you can choose the noisier hats, cymbals, with that kind of sound. Next, let's talk about tuning our drum layers to be in key with the rest of our production. Does this matter? Yes, if you do have a tonal drum layer that has a note association with it. Sometimes Splice will tell you that note. If you can't find it, you can always use a tuner plugin, or you could open up a spectrum analyzer and try and find something like the fundamental. If you can, ideally you would like to pitch this in the key and scale of your song. Think root, third, fourth, fifth, something along those lines. On the flip side, you could also just do this by ear. Start to change the pitch of your samples and go with the one that sounds best. But I would always encourage you to try this. Don't just drop a sample and assume it's the right note, the right fit for your song. The other thing I'd like to mention is changing the pitch of atonal drum layers, claps, or hats. Although these may not have a note association, you could still change the pitch and get more of like a sound design character change that can be really, really cool. Let's move on to shape of sound. This is really important because a lot of samples will come with these huge tails, these huge reverbs already on them. It's not always needed. Take advantage of things like the ADSR in your sampler or the ability to control fades in your sampler and reshape your drum sounds to fit the mix, the dynamics of the mix, the groove of your mix. The same would apply as if you're working in audio. Get in there and use your audio fades to tighten up longer samples that are needed. What's also cool is you could align multiple samples samples and visually align them with fades. But this is going to create a tighter, more cohesive sound amongst your drum layers. Another cool shaping trick in Ableton is in Beats mode, click this button here and choose the arrow pointing to the right. Now, as you bring this value down, it's going to start to remove the tail, or basically the volume in between each transient, and give you a tighter sound. This is very similar to a noise gate, which is my next tip. Utilize a gate to further sculpt and shape your audio loops. Think of this like the ADSR in your synth. This is almost the same concept for your audio loops. You have the ability to shape the front, middle, and tail, and create a more dynamic, tighter sound from loose, sloppy drum loops. The final tip I want to give you in shape of sound is Transient Designers. Don't sleep on these things. These tools, once again, allow you to sculpt the drum sound and, for example, bring out the transients, reduce the transients. Some of them allow you to push the sustain or remove sustain, but it's another envelope tool that's going to get you to the exact shape and sound you need from your drums. When programming your drums in MIDI, take advantage of velocity. This allows you to create emphasis on certain drum hits. It's kind of like the volume from hit to hit. Check out these 3 different patterns. Same MIDI notes, but different velocities, different feelings. You can see that created a different groove, and I want to stick on this. Let's talk about swing. This is another technique we could use to change the rhythm and groove of a pattern. Go into your groove pool and try different swing values. What you're going to notice though is the groove will change. Instead of feeling very flat and robotic, we start to get this galloping feel because the 2nd and 4th 16th note are being pushed back in time. Now this is all cool when we're in MIDI, but what happens when we factor audio into this? You could still apply swings and groove to audio. You can even extract a groove from an audio sample and now utilize it in any MIDI instrument. Let's talk about how to make your drums feel less robotic. What I like to do in Simpler is take advantage of this LFO, and you can create differences in the volume from hit to hit, the pitch from hit to hit, or even the pan position. Obviously, you want to find a tasteful amount that works for the mix, but here's an example of what this can do. The alternative then is, what happens if you're not in MIDI and you still want to create some variation? You can utilize this LFO plugin and still do it to things like volume, pan position, pitch. Just make sure you choose a random shape and adjust the speed. This next tip is really cool. I want to show you to take an atonal drum layer, but give it a bit of tonality and pitch to match your song. Let's say my song is in A minor and this drum sample is basically just noise. I can boost these fundamentals, A3, A4, A5, for example. I could do thirds, I could do fifths, but in doing this, it's going to emphasize those frequencies which do have a certain note association to them. Let's stay with coloring sounds, and I want to talk about saturation and distortion. The reason this works well with drums is because saturation and distortion adds noise. Most of your drums are noisy to begin with. Look at what it could do to a loop like this. The other cool approach is using something like a multi-band saturator, something like Saturn 2 from FabFilter, where I can color specific frequencies and emphasize them, crunch them, distort them. These are really good alternatives to sort of like juice up your drums and make them larger than life, bigger than they were. This takes me to another tool we could use to color our sounds, and it may not be what you think. A compressor. Instead of using it to balance the dynamics, we can use it for sound design purposes. Look at what a compressor is capable of doing to this drum loop. Now sure, that did balance out the dynamics, but at the same time, it also added some color and character. It's almost like you're getting two things for the price of one. With everything great about drums, they are very transient and dynamic in nature. So one of the things you want to be mindful of is controlling their peak volume. To do this, we typically use two tools, either a clipper or a limiter. Starting with clippers, you have two forms, hard clip and soft clipping. But basically, as your peaks exceed this threshold, it is going to literally just chop those peaks off and remove them. If you go too far, you're going to hear distortion, but sometimes a little bit doesn't sound bad because distortion is noise at the end of the day. So it sort of feeds into the nature of the sound. The other alternative is to use a limiter. This is slightly different because instead of just like cutting your peaks, a limiter is going to compress your peaks at a very high ratio. This works, but it also sounds a little bit more forgiving. I'll typically try each and see which one sounds best, but they're both there for the same purpose: peak control. When it comes to making your drum sounds mono, you do have a couple options. First is just sample selection. If you want a mono hat, a mono clap, choose a sample that was made to be mono, rather than taking a stereo sound and making it mono. But let's say that's what you have to do. What are the options? The first way you could do it is using this mono button. Yes, it is going to make my stereo sample mono, but in doing so, it's going to take the left ear, the right ear, put them on top of each other, and we are going to have phase cancellation. You will notice this sample does not sound the same in mono. So an alternative is you can choose just the left channel or the right channel. This will make your sample mono because what it's doing is, let's say I choose left, it's gonna take what was on the left channel and play it in both ears at the same time. So it's just half of my signal, but there's no cancellation because it is the same signal now in both ears. This can sometimes sound better than just pressing the mono button. I always try both. Go with the one that sounds best. Another really important drum mixing tip in terms of the stereo field is where your drum layers sit. When you choose loops and samples, they will sometimes come pre-panned to the left or right side. Look at this example. All right, saving the best tip here for last, you need to know how to